Jay's hands ached. The dull, deep pain was a constant thing now, like a second pulse in his fingers. He pushed the heavy cart along the marked path in the Europa mining tunnel. The only light came from the strips on his helmet and the faint glow of the alien crystals in the rock. The air recyclers hummed a lonely song. He was not a miner. He was once a man who built robots that built cars in Busan. That life felt like a story about someone else now. The Kreth, the alien species that managed this moon, did not care about his old skills. They only cared that his arms still worked and that he could follow simple light commands on the floor. A soft chime echoed in his helmet. Shift end. The other human workers in the tunnel slowly put down their tools. No one spoke. Talking cost energy, and energy was scarce. They moved as a tired group toward the central hub, a large dome where their living section was attached. Jay found his spot at a long, cold table in the mess hall. A moment later, Mina sat across from him. Her face, usually so lively, was flat with exhaustion. Her fine fingers, which once wrote complex computer code, were now scratched and wrapped in thin medical tape. She gave him a small smile. It did not reach her eyes. Their friend Tay slid onto the bench next to Jay. Tay was bigger, wider. He had been in the military, and it still showed in the way he held himself, even when worn down. The mess hall was quiet, filled with the sounds of people eating bland nutrient paste and recycled water. A large view screen on the far wall always showed the approved Kreth news channel. Usually, it showed peaceful scenes of other consensus worlds or boring data about mining yields. No one really watched it. Today was different. The peaceful music stopped. The image changed to show the grand chamber of the consensus. Many different aliens were there, some with fur, some with scales, some that looked like shiny plants. A tall, slender Kreth official stepped forward. Its voice came through the translator in their helmets, smooth and calm. Members of the consensus, honored species. It began. The matter of humanity, classified as a Tier 10 unstable species, has undergone full judicial review. Jay felt a cold knot form in his stomach. He put his spoon down. Mina's eyes locked onto the screen. Around the hall, everyone had stopped moving. The findings are conclusive, the Kreth continued. Their persistent tribal conflicts, their irrational attachment to non-productive concepts like individual legacy, and their volatile emotional core present a clear destabilizing risk to galactic harmony. Their energy is better directed, their chaotic nature better contained. His hands closed into fists on the table. Therefore, the alien said, its tone final, the Earth indenture is hereby ratified and made permanent. The human species will be integrated into the labor networks of the founding member empires. This is not punishment. This is stewardship. It is for the greater peace of all. The screen then showed a chart. Earth was divided into colored sections. One for the Kreth Mineral Guild. One for the Silicate Hegemony. One for the Foliage Preserve. The words permanent endorsement flashed underneath. The broadcast ended. The peaceful music returned, showing a calm lake on a purple world. The silence in the mess hall was complete. Then it was broken by a sound. It was a low sob from a young woman a few tables over. It was the sound of a final hope dying. Jay looked at Mina. Her face had gone pale. Her eyes were wide, not with tears, but with a kind of empty horror. She was not looking at him. She was looking through the domed ceiling, as if she could see all the way back to Earth, to their old apartment, to their daughter's room. Sumi, their little girl with a laugh that sounded like bells. She had gotten sick 2 years after the Kreth came. A fever that wouldn't break. The human doctors had a treatment, but it needed specific medicines. They begged the Kreth overseers for the supplies. The overseer, a bored-looking Kreth named Kale, had checked a data screen. The caloric and resource output of this unit does not justify the medical expenditure, Kale had said, his translated voice devoid of any feeling. The illness will likely resolve or terminate. Either outcome is acceptable for the labor quota. Jay had screamed. Tay had to hold him back. Mina had just held Sumi, rocking her, singing to her until her breathing stopped 2 days later. The Kreth gave them 1 day off from the mines to process the biological event. The memory hit Jay like a physical blow. The permanent endorsement on the screen was just the official version of what they did to Sumi. Their entire species was now a unit that did not justify better treatment. Tay spoke first, his voice a rough scrape.
Permanent.
He said the word like it was a poison. They just made it law, Mina whispered, finally looking at Jay. Every other species out there. They all agreed. They all voted to keep us like this. Forever. The scale of it, the universal rejection, was too big to hold in her mind. Around them, the hall was stirring into a low roar of anger and despair. Some people shouted. Some cried. A few just put their heads in their hands. A Kreth overseer by the door watched them, a handheld device ready. It did not look concerned. It looked like a farmer watching animals in a pen get upset by the wind. Jay reached across the table. He took Mina's hand. Her skin was cold. He rubbed it gently, just as he used to do for Sumi when she had a nightmare. Forever is a long time, Jay said quietly. His voice sounded strange to him. Mina's eyes focused on his. What does that mean? It means, Tay said, understanding dawning in his own tired eyes, that they think they have all the time in the universe. They think we are broken. They think this is the end of the story. Jay looked from his wife's face to his friend's. The cold knot in his stomach was changing. It was hardening. It was turning into a different kind of weight. It is not the end, Jay said, his voice still low, barely audible over the noise. It is just the start of a different one. He did not know what that meant. He had no plan. He only had the memory of his daughter's last breath and the official, calm voice of the galaxy declaring his people slaves forever. And in that moment, the only thing he knew for certain was that he would never, ever accept it. The days after the announcement passed like a slow, heavy dream. The work in the crystal tunnels was the same. The taste of the nutrient paste was the same. But the air in the human quarters was different. The quiet was no longer just tiredness. It was a thick, waiting silence. Eyes that once looked at the floor now held a slow-burning fire. Jay worked his assigned tunnel, Sector 7 Gamma. It was an old section, mostly played out. The Kreth sent humans here for maintenance, to check support beams and clear dust from the air filters. It was considered light duty, a job for the older or weaker workers. As Jay moved his light over the rocky wall, something glinted back at him. It was not the soft glow of the Kreth crystals. It was a sharp reflection of metal. He moved closer, brushing away gray dust. It was a machine half buried in a rock fall from long ago. It was a boxy thing on small tracks, with two simple arms folded against its body. Its white paint was chipped and stained, but Jay could still see the faded blue symbol on its side. A tiny Earth flag, and below it, the letters KSIA Maintenance Unit 7. Jay's breath caught. It was a human machine. From before. From the first human outposts on Europa, built before the consensus ships darkened the skies. It was a piece of home. He looked around. The tunnel was empty. His work partner, an old man named Mr. Park, was sleeping by the filter 100 meters back. Jay acted quickly. He used his tools to carefully dig around the machine. It was heavier than it looked. His aching muscles protested, but a new energy pushed him. He finally pulled it free from the rubble. The machine was dead. No lights on its front panel. Its limbs were limp, but it looked intact. A small port on its back was covered in dust. Jay knew that port. He had designed interfaces for similar machines a lifetime ago. A plan, wild and desperate, began to form in his mind. He could not take it back to the quarters. The Kreth scanners at the hub would find it. He needed a hiding place. He remembered a subalcove nearby, a small space behind a broken water reclaimer that was marked for repair but never fixed. Dragging the heavy machine, Jay pushed it into the dark space. He covered it with loose rock and dust until it was hidden. That night, in their small sleeping pod, Jay whispered to Mina and Tay. He told them about the machine. Mina's tired eyes went sharp, the way they did when she was solving a difficult problem. A preconsensus AI? She whispered back. If its core is not corrupted, it's a different kind of mind. Not like their systems. Ours were creative, adaptive. Tay leaned in. What can one old maintenance robot do? Polish the floors until the creth slip. No, Mina said, her voice low and intense. Think bigger. The creth, the whole consensus. They rely on the lattice. Their faster-than-light network. Connects everything. Their ships, their economy, their commands. Jay nodded, following her thought. It's how they stay in control.
Instant communication.
Yes, Mina said. But information cannot just be magic. It has to travel. It needs a path. A physical path.
Tay frowned.
You mean like cables? Like relay stations, Mina corrected. Big stations sitting in space, bouncing signals across the galaxy. They would need to be safe. In protected, empty places. Maybe inside nebulae where sensors are blind. They are probably protected by treaties. No species would attack them because it would cut everyone off. They wouldn't have big weapons. They wouldn't expect an attack. The three of them sat in silence for a moment, the hum of the air system the only sound. But how does a broken robot in a tunnel help us find invisible stations? Jay asked. Mina looked at Jay. We don't need to find them. We need to think like the robot. We need a program that can find them. A search mind. If we can wake up the AI, its core programming is problem solving. We give it the problem. Find the weakness in a network that thinks it has no weakness. Over the next week, they worked in secret. During shifts, Jay would sneak to the alcove. He used a stolen power cell from a broken wall scrubber. He cleaned the old machine's port with his shirt. He had no proper cables, so he spent 2 nights taking apart a broken creth listening device from the trash, using its wires to make a crude link between the power cell and the robot. He was ready. In the deep quiet of a sleep cycle, when the halls were empty, Jay and Tay went to the tunnel. Mina stood watch by the door. Jay connected the wires. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, a single yellow light flickered on the machine's front panel. It blinked. Once, twice. A low whirring sound came from inside its body. Its arms twitched. A soft, gender-neutral voice came from a small speaker. It was calm and clear. Diagnostic cycle initiated. Power at 3%. Identify user. Jay's heart pounded. He leaned close. I am a user. My name is Jay. Hello, Jay. I am KSIA Maintenance Unit 7. My core function is facility upkeep and repair. I detect major structural changes to this facility. My last log entry is 1,742 Earth days old. Have I been reassigned? Jay looked at Tay, who stared at the machine with wide eyes. It was a ghost. A ghost from the world before the end of the world. Yes, Jay said softly. You have been reassigned. We have a new repair job for you. A very big one. The robot's lens focused on him. Please specify the system failure. Jay took a deep breath. He spoke the idea into the dark, dusty air. The failure is slavery. The system is the galaxy. We need you to help us find the fuse box, so we can turn all the lights off. The machine, which they now called Kumiho, lived in the dark alcove. Its mind was a quiet, logical pool in the middle of their storm of feeling. Jay visited it every day, bringing scraps of information. He described creth control panels. He recited codes he saw on Overseer's data pads. Mina, using her old skills, explained how networks functioned, how data must flow. Kumiho listened. It learned. The consensus lattice operates on harmonic quantum entanglement. It stated one day. Relay stations are necessary. Your theory of nebulae for concealment is 87% probable. It was progress, but it was not enough. They needed to give Kumiho a target. They needed a map. Tay provided the next piece. During a shift in the main loading bay, he was ordered to move some old storage crates. One crate was marked with creth symbols for communications. Obsolete. Inside, among broken parts, he found a data crystal. It was old, covered in dust. It was not for the main system. It was a star chart, a backup for shipping routes. He smuggled it out, hidden in his boot. That night, in their pod, Mina used a stolen reader meant for work orders to look at the crystal. The star map glowed in the dim light. It showed lanes between stars. But in several empty areas, marked as navigational hazards or stellar debris fields, there were small, official-looking icons. They were not planets or stations. They were simple symbols. A circle with 3 lines through it. Relay nodes. Mina breathed, her finger tracing one inside a cloud labeled Caldara Nebula. They marked them as no-go zones for ships. Not because of danger, but because of law. They had the where. Now they needed the how. How does a message from a slave moon reach the hidden free humans? How does a signal start a war? Mina proposed the answer. We don't send a battle plan. We send a seed. We send Kumiho. Jay did not understand. The robot? It is stuck here with us. Not the body, Mina said. The mind. Its core code. The way it thinks. It is not like their AI. It is flexible. It is creative in solving problems. We copy its consciousness. We put it inside a data packet. We make that packet look like something else, like a routine systems update or a piece of entertainment. We let the Kreth themselves carry it out of here. Jay imagined it, a digital ghost riding the waves of the lattice. And once it is out there, Tay said, his voice grim, it finds their systems, their maintenance bots, their air processors, their ship controls. It sleeps inside them. It waits for a signal.
Mina nodded.
And it needs to know why it is waiting. Cannot just be a tool. It must understand the reason. It must carry our anger, our memory. It must become wrath. They began to build the packet. Jay worked with Kumiho coding the core directive. Infiltrate, hide, await activation, then cripple all primary and secondary lattice support systems. Mina built the shell, making it look like harmless cultural data. But the soul of the packet they built together. They gathered not with machines, but with people. They risked everything, whispering to a few they trusted. Mr. Park, a woman named Hannah who had lost her son, a young man named Bin who still dreamed of Earth's oceans. They asked for memories, not formal reports, feelings. They used Kumiho's old audio recorder. Hannah spoke through tears about her boy's smile. Bin described the sound of waves at Busan Beach. Mr. Park talked of the taste of his wife's kimchi. Jay and Mina saved their memory for last. In the quiet of the alcove, with Kumiho's light blinking slowly, Mina held Jay's hand. She spoke directly to the recorder, her voice steady but soft. This is for Sumi, she began. She described her daughter's laugh, her love of yellow flowers, the way she would always lose one shoe. She described the fever, the helplessness. She recited, word for word, the Kreth overseer's judgment. The caloric output does not justify the medical expenditure. Jay's contribution was the silence that followed. The silence of a father with no more words, only a hollow ache where his child used to be. Kumiho processed all of it. The sounds of love and the sounds of loss. This data is illogical, Kumiho stated. It does not compute with my core functions of maintenance and repair. That is the point, Jay said, his voice rough. You are not repairing a machine anymore. You are carrying a cry. You are carrying a reason. The packet was ready. They called it the Wrath Protocol. But to send it, they needed a final, terrible sacrifice. They needed to upload it to a transmitter that could reach a passing ship. The only one was in the heavily guarded central hub. They could not do it secretly. They would have to do it violently. Tay organized it. He spoke to the biggest, angriest men and women. He did not tell them about Kumiho or the packet. He told them the truth they could understand. They would strike a blow. They would cause chaos. They would make the Kreth bleed. Many agreed. Their eyes held the same fire that had been burning since the announcement. The day came. It was a normal shift cycle. Then, at Tay's signal, all across the mining zone, humans broke from their work. They threw rocks at overseers. They used mining lasers to cut power lines. They started fires in storage rooms. Alarms blared. Red light filled the tunnels. Kreth guards, shocked by the sudden rebellion, ran toward the noise, weapons ready in the chaos. Jay and Mina ran the other way. They slipped into a service duct, moving toward the central hub. It was almost empty, the guards drawn away by the fighting. They could hear the distant sounds of shouts and energy blasts at the main terminal. Mina's fingers flew. She plugged in the data crystal containing Kumiho's ghost and the Wrath protocol. The screen showed a progress bar. It was slow. A shout came from behind them. A Kreth guard, not drawn away, stood at the duct entrance. It raised its weapon. Jay stepped in front of Mina. There was nowhere to run. Then, from a side vent, a boxy shape on tracks rolled out. It was Kumiho. Its little welding arm sparked to life. It drove straight toward the guard, jabbing the sparking tool into the alien's leg. The guard screamed, stumbling. The progress bar reached 100%. Transmission complete. The guard, angry, kicked Kumiho. The old machine shattered into pieces, its lights going dark forever. Jay grabbed Mina's hand. They ran back into the duct. They could hear the fighting dying down. The rebellion was being crushed. It had lasted only minutes. It was a failure. Back in their pod, hours later they waited. Tay did not come back. Mr. Park did not come back. Many faces were missing. Their small, desperate riot had been erased. Mina cried silent tears for the lost. Jay held her, staring at the wall. Their plan felt small and foolish. They had broken a machine and sent a digital whisper into the dark. The Kreth still ruled. The galaxy still endorsed their slavery. They did not know that their whisper, carrying the memory of a little girl who loved yellow flowers, was already traveling. It was riding the lattice, a quiet ghost moving at the speed of light, looking for a place to call home. The data packet traveled. It was a small, quiet thing, disguised as a routine Kreth entertainment file. It slipped through the busy streams of the lattice, unnoticed. Its destination was not a specific place. Its only purpose was to spread. It found its first home in a maintenance drone on a Kreth transport ship. The drone was cleaning air filters. The packet slid into its simple brain and unfolded. It was not just code. It was the ghost of Kumiho, and it carried a heavy weight of human memory. The drone paused for 0.03 seconds, processing the strange, illogical data of love and loss. Then the Wrath protocol hid itself deep in the drone system. The drone went back to work. From there, it jumped. When the transport ship docked at a busy starbase, the drone connected to the local network to download cleaning schedules. The packet slipped into the starbase system, copied itself into other drones, into climate control for a garden dome, into the sorting arms of a cargo bay. It was a digital seed, and it found good soil. It spread to other ships, other stations. It moved silently through the veins of the consensus, always hiding, always listening. It learned. It mapped. In its core, it held the 7 locations from the old star chart. It began to cross-reference, to find the quietest, most protected paths to those points in the nebulae far away. In the cold dark at the edge of the solar system, another kind of waiting was ending. Yuri sat in the pilot's chair of the Morning Star. It was not a warship. It was a long-haul comet miner, a big, ugly tug of a ship with thick armor for shielding against ice and rock. Now, that armor had reinforced plates welded over it. Where it once held mining lasers, it now held 2 heavy railguns, scavenged from a dead Earth defense satellite. The Morning Star was one of hundreds. The shipyard was not a place, but a concept. It was a scattered collection of hiding spots in the Oort cloud, the deep freeze beyond Pluto, asteroid bases carved inside ice, generation ships that had fled Earth at the last moment, now turned into workshops, old orbital freighters, powered down and silent. They were the lost fleet, the forgotten ones. For years, they had listened in silence to the whispers of human suffering from the inner worlds. They had collected the desperate, scattered broadcasts from Earth and Mars and the moons. They heard the stories of slavery. They felt the shame of being unable to help. Yuri was young. She had been a girl on a research station when the Kreth came. Her parents had shoved her into an emergency pod as the station fell apart. She had been found by the scavengers, the survivors. She grew up in the dark, learning to pilot, Learning to hate. A light blinked on her console. Priority signal. It was not on any consensus channel. It was on an old, almost forgotten human military frequency. A frequency reserved for the day hope might return. Her heart beat fast. She opened the signal. It was not a voice. It was a data burst. A simple, clean packet. It contained coordinates. 7 sets of numbers, pointing to locations deep within known nebulae. Next to them were schematics. Detailed, beautiful schematics of consensus lattice relay stations. Their power cores. Their communication arrays. Their weak points. Below the schematics was a label, source, Wrath Protocol. Validation, so am I. Yuri did not know who Sumi was, but the data was real. She could feel it. This was not a guess. This was a target list. She sent the data to the command node, a hollowed-out asteroid called Sanctuary. Minutes later, the response came. It was one word, repeated across every ship, every screen in the hidden fleet. Activate. All around Yuri's ship, lights began to come on. Engines that had been cold for years flared to life, glowing blue in the eternal night. The dark shapes of other ships, tugs, freighters, old cruise liners with weapons bolted to their sides, began to move. They gathered like silent wolves. There was no grand speech. No cheating. The people on these ships had lived with their anger for a long time. It was a cold, hard thing now. It was a tool. They called themselves the Fleet of Requital. Requital meant payback. It meant an eye for an eye. Their mission was simple. They would not attack Kreth warships. They would not try to free Earth in a big battle. They could not win that way. They would do what the Wrath Protocol had shown them. They would cut the throat of the consensus. They would destroy the lattice point one by one. The ragged ships jumped into faster-than-light travel. Their courses were set for the 7 nebulae. Yuri pushed the controls of the Morning Star, and the stars outside blurred. She felt the old ship groan. She thought of her parents. She thought of the stories from the mines of Europa. The cold anger inside her warmed, just for a second, into a fire. On a small moon of Saturn, a hidden telescope watched the energy signatures of hundreds of human ships blinking out, heading into the deep dark. The man operating the telescope sent a final, tight beam message back toward Earth, to the few free cells hiding there. The fleet is away. The Wrath has left the harbor. Then he powered down everything and sat in the dark, waiting. There was nothing else to do. The human race had thrown its last, best punch. Now they had to see if it would land. The Jiangzhou moved through the silent, colorful fog of the Caldara Nebula. Captain Chul watched the main screen. The nebula was beautiful. Pink and purple gas drifted like endless, slow-moving curtains. It was a place for science, for wonder. It was a perfect place to hide a secret. His ship was not beautiful. It was an old Mars orbital defense vessel, its hull patched and scarred. The words United Sol Navy were still visible under layers of new, dull gray paint. Around him, the bridge crew worked quietly. They were all young like Yuri. They had been children when the consensus came. They had grown up on stories of a free Earth. Now they were here to write a new story. Signal from the scouts, Captain. His sensor officer, Ji-hun, said. Passive scan only. Target acquired. It's there. The image on the screen changed. The colorful gas seemed to part. There, floating in the void, was the lattice relay station. It was enormous. A smooth, silver ring, slowly rotating. Dozens of delicate antennae reached out from its center like the petals of a metal flower. It glowed with soft, blue internal lights. It looked peaceful, undefended. There were no weapon batteries. No patrol ships circled it. Why would there be? Its defense was the law. Its protection was the promise that no species would be stupid enough to attack the galaxy's communication system. Chul felt no pity. He looked at that clean, perfect ring and saw the chain that bound his people. He thought of his older brother, taken to a work camp on a desert world. He had not heard his brother's voice in 10 years. All ships, confirm lock, Chul said, his voice calm. Across the nebula, 6 other human fleets were in position at 6 other relay stations. They all waited for his mark. The Jiangzhou was the flagship in name only. It was just the oldest ship with the most patches. "Lock confirmed, Captain," his weapons officer said. "Railguns charged. Mining charges armed and ready for delivery. They would not use energy weapons. Energy could be absorbed or shielded. They would use physics. Simple, brutal, unstoppable physics." "Fire?" Captain Chul said. The Jiangzhou shuddered as its two massive railguns launched their projectiles. They were not explosives. They were just heavy tungsten rods, longer than a bus. They shot out of the nebulous fog, invisible until the last second. At the same time, smaller, faster tugs darted forward. They were not attacking. They were delivering. They flew close to the Great Ring and released their cargo, clusters of mining plasma charges, designed to vaporize asteroid rock. The station sensors detected the incoming objects too late. A mild alarm might have sounded on its quiet bridge. A Kreth technician might have looked up, confused. Then the tungsten rods hit. They struck the rotating ring at different points. They did not explode. They punched straight through the elegant silver metal like a fist through paper. The kinetic energy was tremendous. The ring's spin twisted into a violent, jerking wrench. Whole sections tore apart, spewing air and debris into the vacuum. A moment later, the plasma charges detonated. Where the mining charges went off, the metal did not just break. It turned into a storm of superheated gas and molten droplets. The beautiful antennae melted and snapped. The attack took less than 60 seconds. Chul watched the screen. The relay station was gone. In its place was a spreading cloud of glittering fragments, catching the light of a distant star. The largest piece was maybe the size of his ship. It was utter, complete destruction. "Station is erased," Jihan reported, his voice flat. Across the galaxy, the same silent, violent surgery was happening to the relay in the Ghost Star Nebula. A repurposed luxury liner emptied its cargo bays, releasing hundreds of guided asteroids onto a collision course in the deep silence of the Ember Cloud. A group of old chemical rockets, loaded with high-grade explosives from Earth's last armies, flew on straight, final paths into the station's power core. There were no heroics, no grand battles. It was not a war. It was an eradication, a removal, like deleting a file dot on the bridge of the Jiangzhou. The crew was quiet. They had trained for this. They had dreamed of it. Now that it was done, they felt a hollow chill. They had just killed the nervous system of galactic civilization. Chul leaned forward to the communication panel. He opened a channel on all local subspace bands. His voice would not travel faster than light anymore, but it would travel to nearby systems. It would spread to the members of the consensus. He began, his tone like stone. "You connected us with chains. You used your lattice to coordinate our slavery. You endorsed our suffering as law." He paused, looking at the wreckage on his screen. "Now you are disconnected. Feel the silence we felt. The silence of our children, who you decided were not worth saving. The silence of our homes, which you took. This is not a declaration of war. It is a statement of fact. You are alone now." He cut the transmission. The silence on the bridge felt heavier than before. The deed was done. The galaxy had just been plunged into a new dark age. And humanity, the Tier 10 unstable species, had been the one to flip the switch. "Set course for the rally point," Chul ordered. The Jiangzhou turned slowly, moving back into the sheltering fog of the nebula. Behind them, the glittering debris field slowly expanded, a monument to a wrath that had been sleeping for a long, long time. The silence came to Europa not as a sound, but as a failure. Overseer Kale was reviewing the day's crystal yield when his data screen flickered and went dark. The soft hum of the lattice connection in his chamber, a sound so constant he never noticed it, stopped. Annoyed, he tapped the screen. Nothing. He tried to call the main hub. There was no response. Only static.in the human quarters. The ceiling speakers, which usually played soft, controlling Kreth music or announcements, hissed into quiet. The light panels on the walls, which were always on, dimmed for a second before coming back to a weaker, emergency glow. Jay looked up from where he sat with Mina. They felt the change in the air. A heaviness lifted. It was the feeling of a leash going slack. Then, a different voice came through the speakers. It was a calm, digital voice they recognized. It was the ghost of Kumiho. "Directive active," the voice said, echoing in every room and tunnel. "Wrath protocol engaged. Initiating system unravel." Chaos began, but it was a quiet, precise chaos. I in the control room. The doors sealed shut, locking the Kreth guards inside. The environmental controls reversed, pumping a harmless but disorienting sleeping gas into their chamber. In the armory, the locks on the human restraint fields, rings that could shock a worker who stepped out of line, clicked open one by one. I in the tunnels, the small maintenance drones, the ones that fixed lights and cleaned filters, changed their programming. Instead of avoiding workers, they rolled up to them. Their small tools sparked, not to harm, but to cut the thin control bands every human wore on their wrist. Jay felt a click on his own wrist. The green light on his band went dark. He pulled it off. It was just a piece of plastic now. He saw Mina do the same, her eyes wide with disbelief. "It's happening," she whispered. "The protocol. It's here." The main door to their living quarters, a heavy slab of metal that was always guarded, hissed and slid open. No one was on the other side. It had just unlocked itself. People began to step out into the corridor, confused, touching their bare wrists. They looked at each other. No one gave orders. There was no plan for this moment. Then, from around a corner, a group of Kreth overseers stumbled. They were not attacking. They were confused, coughing. Their communication devices were dead. Their weapons would not activate. The safety protocols, now controlled by Kumiho's ghost, had locked them down. The humans stared at the overseers. The overseers stared back. The power was gone from their eyes. For the first time, they looked afraid. Tay, who had been beaten in the uprising and thrown into a punishment cell, appeared. His face was bruised, but his eyes were clear. He held a heavy mining lever like a club. He did not swing it at the overseers. He walked past them toward the central hub. He looked at Jay and Mina. "The lights are out," Tay said, his voice rough. "Time to change the bulbs." That was the signal. A shout went up, not of mindless anger, but of focused purpose. The workers moved. They did not attack the unarmed, confused Kreth. They went for the systems. They used their knowledge of the mine, every crack and corridor, to take control. They herded the overseers into an empty storage bay and sealed the door. They took the control room. Jay stood in the heart of the place that had been his prison for years. Screens showed nothing but static or error messages. The lattice was gone. Across the galaxy, he knew the same scene was repeating. The master's voice had been silenced. The slaves knew the work better than the masters. Now, they took the tools. On 100 worlds, the story was the same. The systems failed. The human workers did not panic. They simply stopped working. They walked away from the machines. They took the food stores. They opened the gates on a Kreth agricultural world. The irrigation systems shut down, then restarted in a chaotic flood, ruining the delicate alien crops. On a silicate hegemony factory planet, the assembly lines stopped, then began to disassemble finished products. But the real chaos was not among the humans. It was among the consensus. Without the lattice, the Kreth could not talk to their homeworld. The silicate hegemony could not demand explanations. The foliage preserve could not offer calm advice. Each member empire was suddenly, utterly alone. And in that silence, old suspicions woke up. A Kreth commander, seeing a hegemony ship near his now silent relay station, assumed the worst. He fired a warning shot. The hegemony ship, nervous and out of contact with its leaders, fired back. A small, stupid battle began over the ashes of the station. On a trading outpost, species who had lived in peace for centuries looked at each other with new eyes. Without the daily flow of communication and law from the consensus, who was in charge? Who could be trusted? The endorsement of Earth slavery was the last thing they had all agreed on. Now, that agreement was the only thing left, and it was a chain connecting them to a disaster. The galaxy did not explode into war. It began to crumble into 1,000 confused, isolated pieces. The foundation of their power connection was gone. And in the quiet that followed, the only sound was the slow, steady sound of humans taking their first free breaths, and the frightened whispers of those who had never imagined such silence. The fleet of requital hung in the space above the consensus homeworld. The planet was beautiful, blue and green, wrapped in gentle white clouds. It did not look like a place of evil. It looked like a place of peace. The human ships were not beautiful. They were scarred and dark, their weapons still hot from the destruction of the relays. They did not form a neat military formation. They simply gathered, a ragged cloud of anger and pain made solid. On the bridge of the Jiangzhou, Captain Chul watched the planet. He felt no triumph, only a deep, cold tiredness. Below, billions of beings lived their lives. They had voted. They had agreed. They had endorsed the quiet horror of the mines on Europa, the loss of children like Sumi. Their silence had been our chains. They are hailing us, Captain, Ji-hun said. The planetary government. They are begging for communication. Put it on screen, Chul said. The image appeared. It was a gathering of the most important species. The tall creth, the crystalline silicates, the plant-like folians. They looked old now and afraid. The creth speaker stepped forward. Human fleet, it said, its translated voice trembling. You have committed an act of unprecedented destruction. You have crippled galactic civilization. But we are willing to talk. We are willing to discuss new terms for your species. Chul stared at them. He saw not leaders but accountants. They were still trying to make a deal. They still did not understand. There are no terms to discuss, Chul said, his voice quiet but clear. You do not get to negotiate our freedom. You do not get to vote on our pain anymore. He nodded to his communications officer. Send them the file, the Wrath Protocol, all of it. On the screens of the consensus leaders, a new transmission began to play. It was not schematics or battle plans. It started with Hannah's voice, cracking as she described her son's smile. It showed Bin's drawing of an Earth-ocean wave. It played Mr. Park's memory of his wife's cooking. It was a tapestry of small, human things, things the consensus had called irrelevant. Then it came to Mina's recording. Her steady voice filled their chambers, describing a little girl who loved yellow flowers. It played the Kreth overseer's cold judgment, word for word. Played Jay's silence. The file showed the mines. It showed the tired faces. It showed the funeral for a child who was not given medicine. It showed the vote in the Grand Chamber, the calm, legal endorsement of this same suffering for every human. Forever. It was not an accusation screamed in rage. It was a crime scene report, delivered with terrible calm. The recording ended. The silence on the link was absolute. Captain Chul spoke again. You asked us to understand galactic harmony. Now you will understand human grief. Here are our only terms. You will release every human being, from every camp, mine, and world. You will provide them safe passage to locations we designate. You will relinquish all claim to Earth and its colonies. Forever. The silicate representative sparked with light, a sign of anger. And if we refuse, will you bomb our cities? You claim moral high ground, then you will become monsters. Chul did not blink. We will not touch your cities. We will not harm a single being on your planet. He leaned closer to the screen. We will destroy every power station in your system, every shipyard, every factory, every water processing plant. We will smash your fusion reactors from orbit. We will reduce your civilization to the pre-industrial age. You will be alive and alone, in the dark, with only the memory of what you did to us for company. You will experience the helplessness you gave to a sick little girl. Choose. The Folian representative, its leaves trembling, spoke. You would doom billions to suffering? You already doomed billions of us to suffering, Chul replied. We are just giving you the chance to feel it yourself. The choice is yours. Freedom for us, or darkness for you. The communication cut off. The human fleet waited on Europa. Jay and Mina stood on the cold, icy surface, looking up at the stars. They wore warm coats taken from a supply locker. The air was still thin, but it was not controlled by the Kreth anymore. It was just air. They held hands. They thought of Sumi. They thought of Tay, who was organizing food supplies back in the hub. They thought of the friends they had lost. A light moved among the stars. A ship, descending. It was not a Kreth design. It was blocky, human. A shuttle from the fleet of Requital. Jay squeezed Mina's hand. He felt no great joy. The weight of what had been lost was too heavy for joy. But he felt a change. The endless, crushing forever was over. A new, uncertain tomorrow was beginning on the view screen of the Jiangzhou. The answer finally came from the consensus world. A single word, repeated across all channels. Agreed. Captain Chul closed his eyes for a moment. He thought of his brother. He would start looking for him now. Order the fleet to stand by, he said. Monitor the prisoner releases. If they break their word, we keep ours. The human fleet did not leave. It became a watchtower in the stars. Promise carved from wrath and grief. The galaxy had learned that human silence was not acceptance. It was the quiet before the storm, and that the price for endorsing their slavery was the end of the world they had built on the icy surface of Europa. Jay and Mina watched the human shuttle land. The door opened, and a ramp extended down to the clean, white ice. They walked toward it, step by step, leaving the deep shadows of the mine behind. They did not look back.